Hello guys, let's jump straight into today's episode. So I am here solo episoding today to talk all about the Eat Like Ruby fat loss phase. And I know you probably think, oh my God, I hear about this every week, but I wanted to do a dedicated episode purely for the fat loss phase and really talk about what it is, what it consists of, why we do it, why I love it. It is honestly become like the baby of Eat Like Ruby. I absolutely love it. And I thought it'd be such a cool opportunity to really break it down on an episode because we get so many questions, so many inquiries, and it's awesome. I love it. And I just thought, what a cool space to provide all the information because I know so many people obviously do have the questions and the inquiries, but I know a lot of people as well just are always kind of dabbling in like, oh, should I join? Maybe you've done a lot of other things and you may or may not have had success. So you've got a bit of apprehension and you're just a bit on the fence. I always want to just give all the information, make sure that people can make like a really informed, empowered decision as to whether they want to join something or not. So right now is obviously middle of July and we are opening our final round of the fat loss phase for 2024, but then we will obviously have a round in the new year, 2025, which is crazy, and so on from there. So obviously, if you're listening to this in real time, you can take all this in and have a think about that final round for the year. But if you're someone who comes back to this episode at a later date, just know that everything I talk about is obviously going to apply to future fat loss phases. If anything, they'll just continue to get bigger and better as I keep adding things in. But I really just want to break down what the fat loss phase is and what it consists of today. And like always, guys, there'll probably be some crossover in this episode because I do reference it in so many other episodes, but I thought it'd be really cool to go into a bit more detail and actually really explain things. So one of the first things I want to say, and I've said this in so many places before, but no matter how many times I say it, not everyone picks up what I'm putting down. The fat loss phase is not a challenge. I never ever use the word challenge. I never advertise it as that. I never call it that. We never speak to that when you're in there. And I think once you've been in there, you'll completely understand. I think it's so common for people to reach out with an inquiry or send a question and be like, I've got a question about the challenge or the fat loss challenge. And challenge is like a trigger word for me. And I'll come back to that. But I think once you've been inside and you've really started to realize what we provide in there and the way we run it, your mentality completely switches from challenge. So I think that's even a cool thing to clock if you are a current or previous fat loss phase gal. Really have a think about the way you might have thought about it before you joined versus now that you've been through it. You're probably like, that wasn't a challenge. That was something completely different. And it really is something completely different. That's why I'm here to talk about it today. The reason I don't like the challenge word, and like I said, it's a bit of a trigger word, is because I just think it has been used and abused through the fitness industry for so long. And I think so many people have dabbled in challenges and really, really formed that mentality of, you know, going hard in a challenge, restricting a lot of things, cutting a lot of things out, grinding through, toughing it out. It's that real kind of like, I hate this, but I've got to do this to get a result kind of energy. And I think that just sets us up. I've spoken about that in so many ways before, but I think it just sets people up for that real mentality of like, I'm on my challenge and being good. I've fallen off track and I'm being bad. My challenge is over. I'm now like everything's coming undone. Now I have to join another challenge. And I think the challenge cycle is almost just like a yo-yo diet cycle where you just end up on it and being good, off it and being bad. And you guys know my number one saying is there's no right or wrong. We don't look at things as good and bad. I want to educate people on what might be good at different times, what might not be good at different times, what might be right for you, what might not be, etc. But I never want people in that black and white mentality of like, this is good, this is bad, I'm being good, I'm off track, I'm being bad. I just think that's so old school. It's so been there, done that. And to me, that is just a big lack of education and empowerment. And those are two of the main values in Eat Like Ruby. And they're two things that I want to talk about today because I think real education on nutrition and nutrition for you and your lifestyle and how to actually make nutrition work for you and your lifestyle is an absolute fucking game changer. And that is literally my mission with the fat loss phase. So like I said, two of the values of Eat Like Ruby are education and empowerment. I have designed the fat loss phase to be such an educational program. I want people to come in and truly learn about nutrition, and not in a way of like going to uni and learning about nutrition like that, but in a way of actually understanding how nutrition works and then learning how to apply it to yourself, your body, your lifestyle, your goals, and really feeling empowered and in control. I think a person that has learned enough about nutrition to feel in control of where they take their diet and therefore where they take their body composition is literally life-changing. Because if we think about the opposite of that, for so many women, there's been a massive element of lack of control, feeling like they can't control their diet and then therefore they can't control their results and their progress and their body composition. For some women, that has literally been their whole life. So when we think about turning that around, like I said, it's literally life-changing, because you're now in this position where you're like, fuck, this thing I might have struggled with for a really long time, I don't struggle with anymore. Fucking game changer. Very cool. And I'm going to break down the fat loss phase and what it actually consists of in a minute. But when we come towards the end of the fat loss phase, it is such a win-win. Like, it's a win-win to me, because we get people in a position where they're like, I've learned everything I need to learn and I'm good to go. Or people that are like, I've learned everything, I loved it, I feel like I've still got more to learn, or I love Ruby or the community or the space or the resources or all of the above, and I want to go again. And like I said, it's honestly a win-win to me. If someone wants to do endless rounds of the fat loss phase, they can. We actually have girls, bit of a side note, but we have girls do endless rounds of the fat loss phase, but they'll come in and be like, I'm spending this round at maintenance, and they're not even pursuing fat loss, but they just want everything that comes with the program. So that's really cool. But like I said, equally, if people are in that position where they're like, I've actually gained the knowledge, I've gained the understanding, and I'm good to go, that's such a win to me. That's like, my job is done. I love that. And the thing I want to say there is, I speak about this so much when we're in the program, but I never want people to think about it. It is a 10-week program, but I never want people to think about it as in like, my 10-week program starts, or this is where that real challenge mentality comes in. Like, my 10-week challenge starts. For this 10 weeks, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. I have to get up every day and go to gym. I have to train twice a day, which no, I'm literally never telling anyone to do that. I have to say no to things, and just getting into that tunnel vision mentality of like, I just have to stick to this for the 10 weeks. I never ever want people to do that, because when we think about literally what happens in week 11, everything can come undone. And that's where, like I said, people are then like, fuck, got to join the next challenge, and forming that cycle and that yo-yo of, I'm in my 10 weeks, I'm good. The 10 weeks is over, I'm bad. I have to go back to my 10 weeks of good, etc. So what I'm getting at there is, I love to educate and speak about everything in terms of, how are you going to keep this going into week 11, week 12 and beyond, literally for the rest of your life. Like I always say, we are going to be eating for the rest of our lives. If you feel like you've just been given one set of rules and a cookie cutter plan to stick to for 10 weeks, you really do find yourself in that position in week 11 where you're like, do I try and implement this restrictive, boring, tedious shit for the rest of my life? Or am I now like a dog off a leash because my 10 weeks is over, pretty quickly spiral in a direction that I don't want to go, and then feel shitty about that as well? That is literally the opposite of what I want. So I want people to feel like they can literally just cruise out of the other side, like out of the end of the 10 weeks, and keep everything going in week 11, week 12, whatever. And it's very much a choice of, oh, do I want to do another round, whether it's straight away or whether it's later on, because I enjoyed it and I've got a new goal or new shit to learn or whatever? Or am I good to go off on my own? And when someone feels educated and in control and empowered to make that choice, that is, again, such a game changer, because often when we can join things like challenges, it's very much in that frantic energy of like, fuck, I need this. And I never want people to be like, if we think about rejoining the fat loss phase, and I think anyone who has done it or rejoined it can probably clock this, and it's really cool. no one's ever rejoining in the energy of like, I can't go off on my own. It's very much a positive, empowered rejoin where they're like, no, I just want to go again. And that's very cool versus someone, if you think about doing a challenge where you maybe got a really good physical result, but it wasn't sustainable. So then you kind of came undone out the other side, and then you fall into that mentality of like, oh, I need to join again to get a result. Again, fat loss phase girls, think about the different energy there. You guys always rejoin in the energy of like, no, I just want to go again, which is really, really cool. So it's just a massive mindset shift because you've gained education and empowerment and you feel in control. Big fucking yes from me. So on that note, the reason that it is a 10-week program is obviously I have to stop it somewhere. Like it can't be a forever program. We have to put a time frame on it. And I've really spent time working out. Obviously, I've been in the nutrition training space for over 10 years. And this program is really the accumulation of everything that I've taught people in gyms and online and in nutrition programs and training and mindset and all of the things that I've navigated with clients over the years. You start to see real common themes and things that come up often. And I've really taken all of that and put it into this program in a very intentional time frame. So when I think about everything that we give everybody when it opens up and everything we talk about in the first week, that's all very intentional. There's things that we give in the first week and there's things we intentionally hold back in the first week because I'm very mindful of people getting confused, having a sense of overwhelm, information overload, all of these things. I think you need to kind of drip feed things in a way, but there's also things that it doesn't make sense to speak to in week one. And I've kind of mentioned this in recent weeks, but we talk about things in the fat loss phase like diet breaks. We're not going to talk about a diet break on day one because we're setting up the diet on day one. So there's so many things that come up throughout the 10 weeks that we speak to at very intentional times because, like I said, I've coached women on this stuff for years, and you see the common times where people are like starting to hit a bit of a wall and it's like, okay, you could use a diet break. Very common to see that around the same time for a lot of women. So I've intentionally structured this program to be like, let's talk about it then when it actually makes sense to do so. Another thing we talk about is assessing and adjusting. So actually being able to assess everything you're doing and know if you need to adjust it. Again, there's no point talking about that on day one because you've been doing it for 24 hours. We actually need a bit of adherence and consistency in place to be able to step back and make that assessment. So what I'm getting at there is the reason we have it structured over the 10 weeks is because I've really sat down over time and I've changed. If you've done every round of the fat loss phase, there's a couple of girls that have, or if you've done multiple, you'll probably notice that the bulk of the info is the same, but it's been tweaked a little bit over time. And that's purely me watching how they play out and then thinking like, oh, let's move this a little bit. Let's tweak this a little bit. Just constantly refining it to really suit the best time frame and what I think needs to be delivered and when. So that is really the structure of it. And when we think about that, obviously, people can come into the fat loss phase. This is actually a bit of a side note. First of all, people can come into the fat loss phase with a goal to literally lose like 2 kilos or just drop a little bit of body fat. Like I said, some people even come in with the goal to maintain. And then we've also had girls come in there literally aiming to lose 30 or 40 kilos. So I think I said this just last week or the week before maybe, but there's no rules on that. If you want to come in and pursue maintenance, you can. If you want to come in and you've got a 40 kilo goal, you can. The only standard or the only rule that I have in place is that when you come in, you've got to be willing to do the work. You have to actually be a doer. You've got to switch on. You've got to be keen to implement the work. That is the only rule. I don't care where else you fall on any other scale, no pun intended, but so long as you tick that box, you can come in. But if we think about somebody, coming in and wanting to lose 2 kilos versus somebody wanting to lose 40, obviously these people are going to actually stay in a physical fat loss phase for a different amount of time. We talk about this when we're in there. So we talk about having a big goal, having a small goal, what position you're in, at what points do you ramp things up, at what points do you have the diet breaks, everything I just said before. But obviously if we think about the program being 10 weeks, there are people that may definitely need and want to pursue fat loss for longer than 10 weeks. But this is where whether you come back and do another round or not is completely up to you. But if we think about that, if you have actually been given all of the education tools and resources to keep that going after the 10 weeks, you can absolutely do so. So I never want people to think like, oh my God, I've got this big goal and I've only got 10 weeks to do it. That is absolutely not the case. You can absolutely chip away at that goal across the 10 weeks, but I'm also going to continue to give you the resources and the education and everything that I've got throughout that time so that when you get to week 11, you can head off on your own if you want to and be like, okay, cool. Rubes has told me when and what to look for when it comes to diet breaks, when and what to look for when it comes to maintenance. How can I adjust my training? How can I adjust my nutrition? Steps. How do I navigate Christmas, Easter, holidays, eating out, all of these things? You've got all of that info to keep it going well beyond the 10 weeks. The other thing is, like I said, some people rejoin for that very reason, especially if you're someone who is a bit of a beginner or you're a newbie, tracking food, flexible dieting, any of this stuff is quite new to you. It can take a few weeks to get the ball rolling. And then we can find that maybe you're in week 3 or 4 when everything really starts to settle and you find your groove. And then you're like, fuck, I've only got 6 weeks left with Rubes and to ask questions and to utilize all the resources and stuff. Super common to then want to go the second round. Often it's really common for people to go through what I just said, kind of find their groove over the first few weeks, really get the ball rolling through the middle and the second half of the phase, and then do another round to keep that rolling and to navigate moving to maintenance while they've still got the access to me and the community and the resources and all the things I keep mentioning. So that's really cool. One thing I wanted to read out a little feedbacky thing that I've got from somebody who did the fat loss phase. So guys, the reason I want to read this out is because this is a person who did one round but kept everything going well beyond that round. So this is a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. Shout out to Mon. I won't name surnames or anything, but if you're listening, you'll know who you are because you literally wrote this message. This is a message I got from somebody who did the very first round of the fat loss phase, which was August 2023. And she said, hey, Ruby, I never said, sorry, let me take it back. She sent me this in April this year. So that round was August to November, and then she sent me this in April after that. Hey Ruby, I never said thank you for your absolute wealth of knowledge when I joined the fat loss phase last year. I ended up losing 11 kilos by the end, went into maintenance, then went back into another deficit to lose a total of 19.2 kilos. Now I am thriving with all the knowledge I learned from you to live a non-restrictive lifestyle. I have never been happier and more confident. Thank you for all that you do. I mean, guys, that is great for my ego, but that is also great for Mon. That's so cool. And that really does just back up everything that I said. That is the exact reason why I run this program. That is the exact message that I want to get. Obviously, like I said, if you've got 2 kilos to lose, you're not going to send a message like that, losing 19 kilos, but it's about having the tools and the resources and the education to absolutely continue for as long as you want in whatever direction you want on your own. That's really cool. And even the fact that she mentioned spending time at maintenance, going back into the deficit, that is literally what I want to teach people so they actually know how to navigate different things. I'm going to assume that she spent some time at maintenance over Christmas and holidays. That's something I talk hugely about to the girls in there, is really setting up your nutrition in different ways to suit different parts of your lifestyle, different parts of your schedule, and navigate all things like that. So if we think about someone doing a restrictive challenge before Christmas, if we think about the time frame that Mon was in, that was August to November, super common time for people to do really restrictive challenges and then get a wicked result, physically feel great, whatever, but then head into the festive season. Like I said before, it's very much that dog off a leash energy, like thank fuck my challenge is over. Festive season, parties, drinks, food, everywhere. Go very hard on that stuff because you haven't really learned much. And then come into January and think, fuck, what do I do from here? And usually the subconscious mentality and sometimes conscious mentality is, well, when I did my challenge, I got a really, quote, good result because it was a good physical result. So if I want to get that again, I need to join the challenge again. And that just backs up everything I said before, where we create that loop where anytime we want a result, we feel like we have to join a challenge. If we think about what Mon has said in this message, she had the understanding to navigate Christmas and the festive season and all that in a different way to actually suit her and where she was at, and then implement everything again on the other side of it that she learned from the fat loss phase without having to rejoin. Like she didn't rejoin, she did that on her own to get to the point where she then lost, what would that be, another 8.2 kilos on her own. That's incredible. Like, so good. I could talk about it all day, but she's just really backing up my point. So that is a perfect example that one round is enough. Like I said, some people love two because they just love the resources, education. They just want to be able to ask me questions, the community, all of the things. And on that note, a really cool thing to talk about with the fat loss phase is the community, because the community is awesome. But there's one thing I want to say here as well. If you are not a person who loves to use community spaces, you absolutely don't have to. And the reason I say this is because when I think about myself, I probably wouldn't utilize a community space that much. Like, I wouldn't be in there every day sharing recipes, because we all know I eat the same fucking thing every day, but I wouldn't be sharing too much because I'm just very much like a run my own race kind of person. But the cool thing about the fat loss phase community is we've got girls who love it and they utilize it every day to literally just share wins, training wins, performance wins, new meals. Like, the recipes and the meal content in there is really, really cool. We've got like clear foodies in there who constantly make new stuff and share that. So that's really cool. And then we also just have like great hype girls in there if you ever need hype or if you've got questions. Obviously, that is my job, to answer all the questions that come through. But so many girls can speak from their own experience, where someone might even say something as simple as like, what grips does everyone use in the gym for RDLs? And then you've got like 6 or 7 people that are like, fuck yeah, I bought these grips, they're awesome, whatever. And then you've literally got so many resources to work with. So the community is awesome in that sense, but I always love to point out to people that you absolutely don't have to use it. And I get so many people towards the end of the fat loss phase that come forward and are like, I'm very much fly on the wall. I don't love to post and be part of something like that, but I've loved watching it. I've loved reading everything. They actually are that fly on the wall vibe where they've used it to take everything in just because they haven't jumped in a lot themselves. That's perfect as well. So I always want people to know that you can use those spaces any way you like, but it is absolutely there for you at the time. And there are people who love spaces like that. And there are people in the fat loss phase who I know I would say they've gotten a significantly better result because of that community and that vibe. There's even girls in this, in the last round, in the April round, who are all coming into the July round anyway, but they made their own little group chat because they were like, if any of us don't come back for other rounds, we still want to talk to each other. So they've actually got their own group chat going, didn't know each other, had nothing to do with each other before the fat loss phase. And now they've got their little bestie foodie group chat, which is just so freaking cool. So you can also meet new fat loss foodie friends in there if you want to. But another thing I wanted to talk about with the fat loss phase is the meal plans, because I am actually a huge fan of meal plans, and I've spoken about them a little bit on the podcast before because I think they can get really shamed in the nutrition coaching world, in the online space. And for me, I just heavily disagree with this. And the reason they can get shamed and the kind of message people can put out there is that they don't help people learn long-term sustainable nutrition, flexible nutrition, all the things. Because obviously if you've just got a meal plan and you follow that, you don't really learn anything in terms of how to actually eat for the rest of your life. So when people kind of push that message really hard that meal plans aren't the answer, usually their answer or their alternative is flexible dieting, planning your own days, tracking your food, etc. I don't think these two things have to be mutually exclusive. I don't think people have to do one or the other. And I think this is where a lot of nutrition coaches can get it wrong, in my opinion, that they very heavily push one of these things and like shit on the other. The way I have designed the fat loss phase, and I actually think this is a game changer for so many people. The way I've designed the fat loss phase is that you get 2 new example meal plans every week. So you get 2 full days of eating every single week. Little bit of a side note, but I've said this in so many ways before. I am so insanely mindful of keeping these simple, easy. They're all on one page. It's actually like a requirement of mine when I write them. If I'm writing a meal plan and it drops down and creates a second page, I literally will sit there and be like, how can I edit this to come back onto one page? Because I never want them to get more and more complex to a point where a person's like, fuck, this is too much. It's confusing, whatever. I can't stick to it. It's literally one day of eating on one page. And simple foods, shit you buy at Woolies, Coles, Aldi, wherever you shop. Like, it's not complex, fancy, crazy stuff. Very simple, very basic. And I'm also very mindful of keeping them like family friendly. We have so many mums in Eat Like Ruby, or so many people who cook for their family or their friends, their partner, their housemates, whatever. Super mindful of just everyday meals that the family are going to like. I'm literally talking stir fry, pasta, tacos, Mexican burgers, pizzas, like just simple basic stuff that you can absolutely make for yourself and pursue your fat loss goals, but you can also make for your family at the same time. And they're going to be like, fuck yeah, pizza night, everyone wins. So a little side note about the meal plans, but definitely worth saying. But the way I've designed it is to have those 2 new meal plans drop in every week, but then also have all of the education and the resources for people to plan their own days of eating. And what I think is such a beneficial way to do this is to start with the example meal plans. So if you come in day 1, you get those first 2 meal plans, have a look at those, log them in. MyFitnessPal is the app that I recommend people use to track their food. We've got all of the information in the fat loss phase of how to actually use MyFitnessPal. I know it can be confusing, so we have so much info in there, but I think it's really cool to follow, even if you literally didn't use MyFitnessPal in the first week or 2, I'd be okay with that. If you literally just followed the meal plans for the first week or 2, but I think the next stepping stone is logging the example meal plan that I've given you into MyFitnessPal and actually just starting to get a feel for the app, starting to get a little bit of a feel for what foods are helping you reach what nutrition targets, etc. Because obviously, I feel like I didn't mention this, but you obviously get your nutrition targets personalized to you to pursue fat loss. So that's literally what we do on day 1. Once you've got those, you obviously get the meal plan that coincides with those targets. Coming back to what I was saying, if you log that into MyFitnessPal and you start to get a bit of an understanding about what foods are helping you hit what targets, I think this is like the start of the education, because you can key in an example meal plan and then you can be like, oh, that meal gives me heaps of protein, or that meal gives me heaps of fiber. And these are the things we tell people to work towards. But I think if we don't have example meal plans and you just give someone targets that's like, okay, eat this much protein, this many calories, this much fiber, if a person has no idea about that stuff, it is literally like, where the fuck do I start? And I think that is so confusing and so overwhelming. If we think about having those nutrition targets, and side note again, here I go, but I don't like to give people exact targets. If you've ever dabbled in like macro tracking or anything similar to this, it can be common to get like your exact protein target, exact carb target, everything like that. I'm much more of a fan, and the way I do it is giving minimum requirements. So really teaching people like, you want to eat at least this much protein, you want to eat at least this much dietary fat, and you want your calories to come in around this number. To me, that is actual flexible dieting. So coming back to the meal plans, if you know those numbers for yourself, you log an example meal plan into MyFitnessPal, you see that that's an example way of hitting those numbers that you've got. You can then, as time goes on, start tweaking it a little bit as you gain more confidence and as you gain more understanding throughout the weeks, to be like, oh, okay, like Rubes has planned this dinner, but I actually feel like this. Or even starting with something as simple as a snack. Like Rubes had this snack for 200 calories. I'm going to take that out. What could I bring in that I really enjoy that fills a 200 calorie snack gap? So I think meal plans are such a great stepping stone. And I've watched so many people go through that process of really sticking to them in the first week or 2, starting to track their food, like starting to track the meal plan in the next few weeks, starting to remove 1 or 2 things and bring in something else. And the further along you go with this, by the end, the 10-week mark, you're actually at a point where you're like, okay, cool, I'm really understanding MyFitnessPal. I'm understanding what is required and what is actually really helpful to hit my personal nutrition targets. I've got, if you think about 2 new example meal plans a week for 20 weeks, you've got 20 example meal plans for life that you could turn to at any time if you're ever like, I need ideas, I'm bored, I want to mix it up to hit these targets. But you've also learned how to hit them on your own as well. And I think that's just such a game changer. And I think that process is really the best way to implement everything that I've just said about getting educated, getting empowered, and all of those things, if we think about doing a strict challenge where they maybe just give you the meal plan and it's like, this is what you eat, that can be great and you can get a physical result and happy days for that time. But then if you ever hit a point where you're like, okay, I just want to eat something else, there's no fucking education as to why. You don't know why you've been eating those foods. You don't know why those foods and that amount and whatever has actually led to you achieving the result that you've achieved. So you've got no education, you've got nothing to work with when it comes to moving away from that plan. And again, that can be such a common reason that people then fall off track, rejoin, get another meal plan, stick to that for a few weeks, get bored, have no idea how to mix it up, fall off track, and that loop continues. If you've actually learned, okay, this is what is required to achieve my goal, aka the targets and the amounts I should be eating, I've been given resources and examples to actually know how to hit these amounts. And then I've also been taught how to gradually been taught over time, how to move away from following a plan and actually make my own plans. You can keep that going for the rest of your life. It's incredible. And it's incredible, if I do say so myself. And on that note, one thing that just came to my mind is towards the end of the fat loss phase, I think it's about week 8 or 9, we do the call about moving away from fat loss and or moving away from tracking. So we literally talk about if you have reached your goal or when you reach your goal, how do you move away from fat loss, aka move to maintenance and actually maintain your result for the long term? And how do we move away from tracking if we want to? And that's really a whole nother conversation. And I have this with the girls in the fat loss phase, but I think there's absolutely no right or wrong. If a person loves tracking their food and using MyFitnessPal and following all of that, I think that's awesome and you can absolutely do it long term. On the flip side, if you're someone who's done it, you've got your result and you're like, yeah, cool, it worked, but I actually don't want to do that for majority of my life, I love to give people the tools and the education to have the stepping stones to move away from that as well. So there's so many ways you can take your nutrition. If we think about obviously coming in, getting educated, empowered, taking back control of your nutrition, reaching your fat loss goal, whether you do it in the actual 10-week fat loss phase or whether you keep it going and reach it eventually, but then being in a position where you're like, okay, cool, I actually feel in control to make a decision now about whether I move away from fat loss, I move away from tracking, I move to maintenance, I keep tracking my food. Maybe I do a muscle gain phase. Maybe I focus on a performance goal. Maybe I focus on more food flexibility. Maybe I focus on planning my own days. Any or all of these things at any time. That is literally my mission. And this is why I say so often there is no right or wrong, because I don't think any of those things are right or wrong. I think it's purely up to an individual to say, what do I enjoy? What works for me? What do I want my nutrition to look like for the long run? And that can change at any time. I'm getting super off topic, but if you want to have phases of not tracking and being flexible, you can. If you then want to come back to tracking and tighten things up for a specific body composition goal or a performance goal, you can. But the real underlying thing there is you know how to and you feel in control about taking that in any direction at any time. Again, I've said this many times and I'll say it again. To me, that is life-changing compared to a person that feels like they can't even achieve their fat loss goal to begin with. But then if they do, they've got to kind of cling to it for dear life. They have no idea where to go from there. And if we think about achieving successful fat loss, when you achieve successful fat loss, you eventually need to learn how to move to maintenance and how to actually maintain that for the rest of your life. Because if you get to your goal and or your healthy weight, you don't want to keep just, quote, dieting for fat loss. And for so many people, that's all they ever know, just from conditioning and living their life like that. Just, if I'm, quote, being good, I'm dieting. And usually dieting is associated with fat loss. Again, think about a person who has actually achieved the fat loss. You don't want that to be your long-term nutrition approach because you don't need it anymore. So it's very, very important to actually have the education and understanding about how to move off in other directions. If you think about the fact that you're going to be eating for the rest of your life, you've got no more body fat to lose. You need to now be eating in a different way for the long term, for the rest of that life. So I can't even remember how I got on that topic, but super important. And the last few little things I've got in my notes here to reference for the fat loss phase is with the meal plans. Like I said before, I'm very mindful of just simple everyday foods, keeping them family friendly, user friendly, etc. I'm also very mindful of people being busy and or confused and overwhelmed. If we think about, like I said, a lot of mums coming to Eat Like Ruby, a lot of students who are maybe studying and working, navigating like night shift, different things like that. I'm so insanely mindful of a person who might feel a little bit lost with their nutrition and training. Maybe you're actually like very like beginner level lost kind of thing, or you're just someone that maybe you do know all this stuff, but you've just fallen off track at some point and you can't, you need to refine it and tidy it up, or you want to refine it and tidy it up, I should say. I'm so mindful that for some people, there's so many other things happening in their life with work, study, kids, looking after people, like so many different things, right? So this is where I think something like the meal plans are so beneficial, because if I think about a person in that position where they've got a lot of other shit going on in their life, whether it's good or bad or whatever, but it's just a lot happening. If we were to then say, okay, cool, you now need to learn flexible dieting on day one to get results happening, that can just be a lot to add to a person's plate. And the thing that I love to think about here is, I've said this way back on the podcast, but I'm going to say it again now. If someone is in a position where they really want to get the ball rolling and get a result, which most people who join a fat loss phase do, I'm very, very mindful of this. So many coaches do have that mentality of like, people need to come in and learn flexible dieting and take a while to get results and get everything happening or whatever. I would rather get someone a result early and then start teaching them shit. If coaches are so adamant on people coming in and learning before they get a result, it is so common for a person to lose motivation, lose excitement, lose all of these things and tap out before that happens. And that's so important to clock. In a perfect world, we would teach everyone everything they need to know, and they'd have this beautiful relationship with food and this awesome flexible diet, and everything would be happy days, and then they would gradually move towards results. If we delay that result for too long because we're so adamant on teaching them X, Y, Z, you're way more likely to lose people in the process. And that's shit for a coach, it's shit for a program, and it's shit for the client who wants the result. I think we need to look at it the other way around. What can I give people to get the ball rolling with results as soon as possible? If we make that happen, if we can give someone an example meal plan or something very simple that puts them in an effective calorie deficit and they start achieving fat loss, if they actually get the ball rolling towards that fat loss goal, so many things shift. One of the biggest things is for them, they might have had a lifetime of feeling like they can't achieve the results they want, and all of a sudden they're like, fuck, yes, I can. That is incredible. And then what happens there is when you do start saying things like, okay, we're going to move away from the meal plans and start planning your own days. We're going to implement a flexible diet. Any or all of these things, the person is a lot more open to it because they trust you. If they've come to you to achieve fat loss and you have given them something initially that gets the ball rolling towards their fat loss goal, the next thing you tell them to do, they're way more likely to do it because they're like, well, she told me to do this. I did it. I got the result I wanted. Now she's telling me to do this, as if I wouldn't do it. So you're going to have such better trust and such better buy-in for that person. But apart from all that, you've actually just got a result for this person who may have been feeling, like I said, really lost and therefore really negative and shitty and just down and out. You get a bit of a result happening for them. Their whole mentality switches to like, fuck yeah, bring it on. I'm excited. Getting results and getting progress can be so motivating and so exciting for people. So it's so beneficial, in my opinion, to get that going. And I am so mindful of the real life human being that is joining something like a fat loss phase, putting good money on the line, putting good time and energy on the line, really investing in themselves in multiple ways. I am so mindful of thinking you're a real life human being on the other end of this who might be feeling any kind of way about food, nutrition, dieting, results, any of these things. The quicker I can change that for you in the most simple and enjoyable way is a big fucking yes from me. And that is my number one priority. If we can get that going, then along the way, I'm still giving heaps of education. I'm giving you heaps of shit to think about. I really want to give people everything I've spoken about in this episode. But that is one of the most like important initial things for people, because it just gets things going the way they want and the way you want, because they're then going to be committed. They're going to be open-minded. They're going to hang around for the next things that you're going to teach them. And then you can actually give them everything that you want. I feel like I'm speaking to coaches more so now than clients. But for clients, just know that this is exactly my mentality when it comes to getting things going towards your fat loss goals in the first place. I've got to come back to my notes because I've gone well away from them here. On that note, I'm nearly done here, guys. But on that note, when we think about the overwhelm and the confusion that can come with starting something like this in the first place, I said on an episode, I think a week or two ago, that you can absolutely come into the fat loss phase, do the nutrition only option, and still get a wicked result. So if you are a person who is a little bit lost, confused, hesitant, apprehensive, not sure, and just feeling like, fuck, this is a big step for me, you can absolutely put training to the side, put that out of your mind, come into the nutrition only option, get your nutrition sorted, get the ball rolling with flexible dieting, get some fat loss happening, all of these things, and then look at training afterwards. And I think I even said on that episode, it's really common coming back to like the rejoins and doing multiple rounds, super common for people to do one round of nutrition only, get their head around all of that, rejoin the next round and add the training. I think this is fucking perfect. So if you've been kind of hesitant for that reason, I will say right now, clear as day, you do not need to do training to achieve fat loss. You absolutely can. We've obviously got that option. But if you're thinking, fuck, this is like, quote, too much, it's a lot, I'm nervous, whatever, and then you're thinking, if I don't do nutrition and training, it's not worth it, I won't get a result, etc. 100% not true. You can absolutely achieve fat loss focusing on nutrition only and just looking at your steps. So really keep that in mind. And I think that's an excellent starting point for a person who might be feeling that way. On that note, the last thing I'm going to say, guys, a little bit contradictive, but let it be okay that there's two ways we can go about this. Training is fucking cool. Training is so cool. So if you are someone who is thinking about doing both and you're open to doing both nutrition and training, I just think training's fucking cool, because if we think about everything I said before with like empowerment and feeling in control, I think training is so insanely good for empowerment and helping people and women to feel empowered. And I've seen this so much over the years. I see this with myself every single day. I've been training for 20 years and I still have such a sense of like self-accomplishment when I leave the gym, and I'm just like, fuck yes, go me. Like I went to gym, I lifted those weights. The thing about lifting weights, guys, this is so insanely off topic, whether you care about fat loss or anything or not. This is so true. The thing about lifting weights, guys, is no one can lift them for you. And that is really fucking cool, because you can have, like, it does not matter how much money you have, what team you have, what resources you've built, what life you live. You literally cannot send anyone into the gym to lift weights for you. And I think that is so fucking cool, because every time you leave the gym, you can have that sense of accomplishment of being like, I did that. I did that. I went there. I lifted them. I did every single rep. That was me. No matter who you are, no matter what your life looks like, no one can do that for you. And anytime you do it for yourself, I think that's just so fucking cool. So massive side note, but that can be so empowering if you feel open to doing training as well. I think I've seen it in Eat Like Ruby. That's where I was going. I've seen it with so many girls in Eat Like Ruby where they step into the gym and they really start to be like, fuck, this is cool. Like I'm actually doing something for me and I'm ticking it off all the time, and it's awesome. On that note as well, guys, we have a beginner training program in the fat loss phase. So if you're someone who is umming and ahhing about training, we've got a beginner program. And I've written this myself, obviously, and I'm very mindful of obviously actually physically being a beginner and, not doing anything too crazy or not doing anything that your body's not conditioned for. But I'm also really mindful of like not having crazy pieces of equipment that are hard to set up, or not doing crazy supersets where you're going to have to be like looking around the whole gym trying to work out different machines. I'm super mindful of like, what is it like to be a person who walks into gym on day one and is just like, what the fuck is all this shit? I've written that program to eliminate as much overwhelm and confusion and having to kind of navigate things as much as possible, because I think it's one thing to just even step into a gym and have the overall experience be a bit overwhelming and confusing. But then when you start being like, okay, cool, I don't know where the leg press is. I don't know where this is. I don't know where this is. And now that I found it, I don't know how to use it. I think the more we pile that into a program for a person that's already just feeling overwhelmed by the gym in the first place, the more likely we are to lose that person and they're not going to want to go back. So the beginner program is very, very mindful of that. But on that note, if you are not a beginner, we have so many other programs that you can add to the training. Completely depends on like how many times you want to go to the gym and so many different options. We have a home training option as well. So if you're someone who trains at home, it literally just factors in dumbbells and booty bands. So if you've got access to just a little bit of equipment like that, you can absolutely train at home. But then we've got the gym program for the gals who are not beginners as well, who really want to get after it. And with all of those training programs, they all are delivered through our training app. We've got videos for every single exercise. The videos are all of me. We've made all the videos. We've done all the voiceovers. We've written all of the instructions. And there's just a lot of info in there if you're not sure how to use anything or do anything. So you can fully utilize that for the training option. But on that note, guys, I'm going to wrap things up there. So if you have been thinking about joining the Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss phase, obviously we have just opened up the final round for the year. It is an awesome round because it goes from like September through to November. So it's like, get ready for summer. But like I said, we cover all of those things like enjoying meals out, diet breaks, spending time at maintenance, moving away from tracking. So if you think about implementing an actual successful fat loss phase through September and October, and then starting to learn, okay, cool, how do I have diet breaks? How do I move away from tracking? How do I enjoy meals out? All of the things that we learn in there, you're going to have all of these tools and resources up your sleeve as you come into the festive season. And I think this is a make or break thing for people's nutrition. I think when you have really, really learnt this stuff, you navigate the festive season in a completely different way to a person that hasn't. And that can be game changing. I've spoken about that on the podcast before, and I won't get into it too much today, but the difference between a person who goes into the festive season really being like, in my opinion, the back end of November right through December, maybe even into January if you go on holidays. If you go into that time feeling like you don't really know how to navigate your nutrition, and it's very much like, I'm trying to be good, but there's so many events. Now I'm off track. I feel like shit. I'm trying again. Usually people eventually just throw in the towel and go, fuck it. It's Christmas. I'm going to eat like an idiot and I'll join a challenge in January. If you have been given all of the tools and resources and education and everything I've spoken about today, and you can actually go into that time thinking about all those things and implementing all those things, but still having a flexible diet and knowing how to actually enjoy all foods, events, and occasions, you can navigate that time of year so differently. If we think back to Mon's message where she had super successful fat loss, went to maintenance, enjoyed that time of year, came out the other side, lost another 8 kilos. That's fucking incredible. And I think it's having the real understanding of nutrition and how to navigate nutrition for all areas of your life and all times of your life, like the festive season, like summer, like events, like meals out, Christmas, all the things. I think that is really the game changer. It's why I do what I do. It's my mission. It's what we do in Eat Like Ruby. It's what we do in the fat loss phase. It is the summary of every single thing that I've spoken about today. So that is all from me. I hope this episode was helpful for anyone who is thinking about joining the Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss phase. Obviously, if you are, you can go to the Fat Loss phase website and we've got a contact section down the bottom. If you have any further questions, follow-up questions, submit them there, guys. People often send DMs. You can send DMs, but the thing about DMs, guys, this is the last thing I'll say is people send DMs about the fat loss phase. At the same time, 60 other people will send me a DM that says something like, oh my God, is your dog's name Nutella? And then your message about the fat loss phase is now like 61 messages deep in my inbox. If we think about the inquiry form on the Fat Loss Phase website, No one's sending questions on that saying, oh my God, is your dog's name Nutella? So anything that comes through there is actually filtered through into our email inbox. G can answer any and all of your questions and give you the info you need. So if you've sent a DM and we haven't seen it, it's because you've been lost in the millions of messages we get about the dog or about fucking what do you eat for breakfast or anything and everything. We get all these crazy DMs. If you've got a legitimate question or inquiry, shoot it through in the inquiry form so it definitely gets seen. It definitely goes to the right place. We can answer any and all of your questions and we can get you into the final round of the fat loss phase for 2024. If you're listening to this at a different time, you can jump in around in 2025. But that is all from me today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back next week.